Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Bridge to India's webinar on India Residential Rooftop Solar Market. This is Sangeeta Suresh from Bridge to India, and I'm very happy to introduce to you the panelists for today. We have panelists from across the rooftop solar spectrum with us today. Sorry, we are just having a little bit of problem. Yes, we have panelists across the rooftop solar spectrum here with us today. Mr. Manoj Nair, Senior Director, Sales from Enphase Energy, a leading player in the microinverter market, is here with us. And we also have Arijit Mitra, Head of Distributed Generation from Longi. Both of them represent the equipment suppliers in the market. Welcome, Manoj and Arijit. We have with us Shah Masood Jafar, Regional Sales Head of Tata Solar, and Gaurav Keswani, AVP of Amplus. They will talk to us from the perspective of developers and installers, respectively. And finally, talk about the all-important financing portion of this segment. We have Ashutosh, Executive VP from EFL, with us today. Thank you, Ashutosh, for being a part of this event. We'd like to especially thank our sponsors, Enphase and Longi, for supporting our webinar initiatives and helping us curate and bring great quality content to our audience. Today's webinar will be an hour and 15 minutes long, and Mr. Vinay Rustagi, our Managing Director, will set the stage. We'll talk about where the residential rooftop industry is at right now, and then it will be followed by a panel discussion. Towards the end, we will take question and answers from our audience. Do send your questions through the text box located at the bottom right corner of the panel in front of you. That is all from me. Over to you, Vinay.
Thank you, Sangeeta, and thank you to all the panelists again. Look forward to having this exciting discussion. Now, I think residential rooftop solar market is one part of renewable sector, which I think almost everybody forgot about. And I say that because the growth in the market has been much slower than in some other segments. Just to give you some number, we estimate total installed capacity in this segment at about 1.6 gigawatt, which is only about 3% of the total solar capacity in the country. And if I contrast that with what's happening in other countries, there's a huge disparity. Just to give you some numbers again, Australia adds about 3 gigawatts plus of residential rooftop solar capacity every year. And just mind you, Australia population is just about the size of, or less than the size of Delhi's population. US adds more than 3 gigawatts in residential capacity every year. Europe does much more. And then we have the staggering number from China, which added as much as 22 gigawatts in this segment alone last year. And that just shows you the huge potential that we have for growth in this market. To be honest, if I look at some of the fundamentals in terms of sustainability, grid resilience, landed cost of power, energy security, etc., I do think that residential rooftop solar is a market that is worth pushing for. The government needs to do much more to exploit the potential of this market. Now, India has been adding about 400 to 500 megawatts of capacity every year. And if you look at some of the drivers and challenges, here on your screen, there are a few drivers in terms of financial attractiveness for the residential consumer and free net metering as it stands. But then there are also quite a few challenges. Just to explain the financial attractiveness part, most consumers today have a reasonable supply of grid power at not too high a tariff, because the residential power is obviously subsidized to some extent. So therefore, the main driver for the consumer today is actually to see what kind of investment returns they can make on installation. So every consumer is savvy enough. They do a very rough and ready analysis of what is the total investment, what is the total generation, and is that investment financially attractive or not. I think free net metering is also a major pull for the consumer. because most consumers don't have a reliable ongoing daytime load to consume all the power. They want the flexibility to bank that power into the grid and to use it in peak evening hours or on weekends, depending on the load. The affordability has been improving with improvement in income levels, falling cost, etc. And then finally, we have the environmental factor, which not very strong, but still for the larger premium urban consumers, that does become the swing factor in terms of the decision making process. Now, on the negative side of the balance sheet, there are quite a few challenges as we see, and that's the reason why the market has been kind of slow to grow so far. The first one is inhibition to long-term commitment. Interestingly, when we spoke to a few consumer bodies, spoke to many of the industry stakeholders, we find that there is actually no one single factor which is forcing or pulling the consumer towards this installation. Many consumers don't even have either the rooftop space available to them, or if when they have it, they want to use it for some alternate purposes, or they may not be willing to make the long-term commitment needed to recoup all the financial benefit from such installations. Then there are two very fundamental points. One is the consumer still, there's a lack of awareness. Consumer doesn't in many instances feel comfortable in making a large ticket purchase from a local installer who may not be very reliable or may not be willing to give a reliable after sales support. And there is really a lack of standard offering from branded, well-known names in the industry with a proven track record, with the assurance of an after-sales warranty and service support. So I think those two, that's a chicken and egg. The larger players are not coming in because the market is small, and the market is small because the larger players are not stepping in. And then I would say the two other factors which are kind of still preventing the growth in the market. One, the costs have started inching up over the last 1 year. Besides the equipment cost, the GST went up, and now we have the risk of BCD coming in from April onwards, and that obviously does impact the financial viability of these systems. And finally, in many cases, where the consumer decides that it is worthwhile making that investment, they want a financing solution, but there is no standard financing solution available to most consumers, or it is not available in attractive terms within the kind of timelines that the consumer aspires to. So there are these changes, drivers and challenges in the market. We believe that some of the drivers will become stronger over a period of time, and that is what ultimately will lead to faster growth in the market. Sangeeta, let's move on.
So just give a second. It's there.
So that's fine. Just move on to the next slide. So the chart on the left, basically we have segmented the market. According to our estimate, there are 92 million urban households. Based on affordability threshold, that's about 25 million households which we believe can afford a rooftop solar system. But within that, because many consumers live in high rises or live in rented accommodation, the target market is only about 3%, and the current penetration of that is only about 0.4%. So that just shows you how small the residential rooftop solar market is in the Indian context. As you can see in the chart on the right, based on our assessment of equipment costs, grid tariffs, finance income, per capita income, etc., we believe that the market is poised to grow very strongly going forward from a base of about 1.5 gigawatts to 16 gigawatts in the base case, and between 10 to 26 gigawatt in the two extreme cases, which is low growth and high growth scenarios. There's always been a debate about, are subsidies a good thing or a bad thing? MNRE still offers 20 to 40% capital subsidy for the residential market. There is a target to disburse 4 gigawatt equivalent of subsidies by financial year 2022. And as of today, the level of sanction is about 3 gigawatt, but the level of disbursement is actually way behind at only about 200 megawatt. These numbers are about 3 months old, so I'm sure there has been some progress in the intervening months. But if you look at the map, which will come up on your screen shortly, in terms of the MNRE sanctions, the bulk of the sanctions are in 3 states, those being Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Karnataka, followed very shortly thereafter by Kerala. So those are the 3 or 4 states where bulk of the subsidies are going in based on the requests from the state nodal agencies. MNRE just announced a relaxation in the subsidy scheme where they said there is no need for the consumers to go to the paneled contractors, and they can just go to any contractor, install the system, and then avail the subsidy from the discom. So there are some positive changes coming in from the government, which should again help drive the growth in the market. Just very quickly, we've been studying this market for over a year. We issued a very detailed report, more than 100 pages on this market. Please do look it up on our website. It's a very comprehensive report covering all the drivers and challenges, market segmentation, policy landscape, etc. So let me just turn to our panelists now. I've got 3 or 4 main questions for the discussion. First one, I think there's still very little understanding of the residential market, and we want to understand who is the typical consumer, what is the consumer's decision making process, what is the role of financing and subsidies in driving the consumer and growing the market. Thirdly, what is the demand for the premium products based on the segmentation of the market? Is the consumer ready to buy into the latest cutting edge products, new inverters, high efficiency inverters, modules, storage products, etc. And finally, as the cost is going up, particularly with some of the recent changes, is how does that impact the market? So let me start with you, Jafar. I know Tata Power is one of the biggest installers in the market. You are present across the country. So why don't you very quickly, briefly give us a sense of what are your observations of the residential market? In particular, who do you think is the typical consumer? Is the typical consumer in the metro cities? Is it in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities? What is the typical installation size? And what is the typical configuration in terms of off-grid, on-grid, or hybrid systems, etc.? Jafar, over to you.
Thank you, Vinay, and thank you to all the people present. I welcome everybody on this very, very important topic of residential solar, because as you rightly said, in the big tree shadow of SME and this big solar plant, residential sometime this kahin pe kone mein chup jata hai. But as you rightly said, this residential market is seeing upstick in last many years. I see a multiple reason for it. I mean, the reasons is not 1 or 2, there are multiple reasons. Of course, the growing cost of energy for consumers is a big concern. So when let me put in such a way that you are asking about the typical consumer. So I see the typical consumer of residential solar are those people who are staying in metro cities, big cities, class A cities, and those who are using those equipments where their energy consumption is on a higher side. typically a 2 or 3 AC kind of bedroom kind of houses, where there are high energy guzzler equipments are installed, and typically the load size is above 3 kilowatt or optimum size 5 kilowatt and above. Those are the people who are paying the higher cost of electricity, and they are feeling the brunt of the power cost. For them, the saving through solar is one of the very attractive option available. So I think they are the typical customers, but they are the first movers. Now, what a good part which we observe over the years, as the situation of power improves across the hinterland also. So people even in so-called tier two cities also, they have also started, realizing the power of solar to reduce their electricity bill. So I see the penetration level going down and down and down. So it is no longer limited to only big city phenomena. It is going to tier two, tier three cities also. One of the factors is, of course, the energy, high energy bills, and people are using that. Another major reason is that there's a lot of push from the government also in terms of subsidy support. There's a lot of advertisement. There's a lot of awareness which has been done by Government of India also, state nodal agencies, Discom, and as well as the players like us. We have also done a lot of activities to create the awareness. Last 2 years back, we have launched a program where we created awareness campaigns across 100 cities in India. Then we keep on doing engaging with the consumer at a different level. So all those factors are also increasing the awareness of the consumer. Of course, is the availability of the product is also one of the reason. We have seen a lot of people, new generation solar entrepreneurs, a lot of new companies which have come up, and they have spread in the nooks and corner of the country. Every city you have some multiple installers who are offering the solar services. So they also in a way helps in spreading the awareness about the product. So the product awareness is increased. The subsidy thing is increased. There's a high cost of electricity which consumer wanted to subside through the solar. So these are 2-3 options. One of the thing which I've also recently observed with the as somebody was mentioning around with the availability of financing. So that is again adding as a big boost, and I think there's a lot of work has to be done on that front. But yes, whatever work has been done, that has given us some upper stick to the consumer demand, and it has made the decision making processes easy, because the moment they see the kind of EMI or the which they are paying towards the cost of their monthly bill, and if it is fall in the same range kind of thing or some same bracket, for them the making a decision becomes very easy. And then there is an emerging segment of consumer which I think wanted to experiment also, which don't want a plain vanilla solution for a residential solution. They wanted to go for a high capacity modules. They wanted to go for a different kind of inverters also. People are exploring hybrid technologies also. So the market there's a lot of activity which is going on, and I see all the positives which are happening in the market, and in the short term, in the long term, I see there's a lot of growth. And so for us, people like us, there's a lot of work to be done, and the market has to be offered and supported for the growth.
Thanks, Jafar. Can I quickly also ask, where do you see the most activity? Is it what is the typical configuration of the system? You said it is about 3 kilowatts or thereabouts, but in terms of off-grid versus on-grid versus storage hybrid systems, how is the market split in your view?
So in my view, see, the issue is that because the typical customer size who is opting for solar is a class consumer, or big city or tier 2 city kind of consumer. So I see a typical load size which is upward of 5 kilowatt. So I say start with 3 kilowatt, but the majority of the activity is seen in the segment of 5 kilowatt or 8 kilowatt. But because subsidy is most of the states is limited to on grid only, so the major activity in terms of residential today is happening in terms of volume, in terms of value. I think it is more into the segment of on-grid segment only. Off-grid is still at some places, but it is not all across the country. But one phenomena which is a hybrid, I see a growth. There's the percentage today may be very small, but I see that there's a potential for that kind of market also to grow in the near term.
Okay, thanks, Jafar. Let me just bring in Gaurav. I think I hope that you related to some of the points made by Jafar, but you feel free to kind of share your experience to the extent it is different. But also, it would be great to understand from you what do you see as the consumer behavior? What are the key concerns? You are selling a premium product, I know. Is the market ready for that? And what is the typical consumer thought process, conversion timeline, starting from making an initial inquiry, going on to the final decision and installation?
Thank you so much, Vinay, and thank you, Bridge to India, for organizing this webinar. Uh, yes. So, typically, just to agree with Mr. Jafar here, that yes, subsidy is one of the major drivers that really pulls the market awareness towards solar. That if the DISCOM has an incentive scheme ready, and DISCOM itself, the only person or consumer knows anything related to electricity is DISCOM. Electricity is DISCOM. So if DISCOM's stamp of approval is there on a product, automatically the acceptability of that product improves. But because of the current subsidy schemes of subsidy regulations and the imposition of like a benchmark tariff, it is sort of killing a lot of innovation that could have happened into this space. Like you rightly mentioned, that the big players are a little scared to enter into this market because the amount of effort it takes for cumulative 100 kilowatt of installation is just a matter of one deal in the CNI segment, or not even peanuts for the utility scale segment as well. So maybe it is not as attractive, but what residential solar does have is volume. There can be immense volumes, like what your report only suggested. 96 million households is not a small number. And definitely in a country with varied profile like ours, we cannot expect a single product to serve everyone. So there has to be constant improvements and constant customization to the technology. But with something like a benchmark tariff that is there, and that one will obviously be the rate that everyone has to quote. Everyone motivated to install the basic.
Gaurav, we are losing you.
Product
Gaurav, we are
only.
losing you.
So I don't see a lot of innovations happening, trying in this space, barring a couple of people that are to evolve into this space. If I talk about the typical life cycle of a customer, of how much time it is taking, of course, it is a high contact transaction. So I'm still here.
Sorry, Gaurav, I'm sorry to intervene, but yeah, you're breaking a lot. Do you want to just check your connection?
Yes.
We can come back to you. Yeah, we will come back to you. Meanwhile, why don't you just check your connection? Manoj, let me come to you. We did talk about how rooftop residential market is growing very rapidly in some of the other countries. I know that Enphase is one of the leaders in countries like US and India, US and Australia. What differences do you find in the Indian market vis-a-vis other countries? Secondly, I also want you to touch upon, I know that, we are, the Indian consumer is very, very price sensitive, whereas you do have a premium product, which is offering the best in class technology and performance. So how do you kind of marry the two and meet the Indian consumers' expectations? Is the Indian consumer, I think like even Gaurav was mentioning, ready for innovative new products? And then finally, I wanted you to talk about also a little bit about storage. How is the storage, how the market prospects for storage allied with rooftop systems? Manoj, over to you.
Sure, Vinay. Thank you. So Vinay, you in your introduction you mentioned about the U.S. market. So that's it's the #1 market for residential solar in the world. It's about 3 gigawatt. So that is a technology-driven market. So Enphase has a presence of 60% market share. It's almost 4 times the market capital of market size of India. We are already selling in US, and the next big market for us is the Europe. Then comes the Australia and New Zealand. So these are the market, the solar, the technology adoption has happened, and the people awareness on solars and the green concept on generation of power, and the green living. So all of them are coinciding for the growth. When it comes to India, we do have about 700 million people. I'm sorry, 700,000 of US dollar millionaires in this country. They all live in independent Bangalore, about 80% of them. So you mentioned about, in your analysis about 96 million households. In that, these people are the #1 buyers who are the technology buyers. So we are actually targeting the technology driven people because they need a lot more advantages. They understand the product, they understand the technology. Their paramount interest will be the safest system in the world, the most reliable system which can work for 25 years. And also it should be modular. In a villa, today the households have a requirement of 5 kilowatt. Tomorrow, they're adding more gadgets. And then the capacity increases to 6 to 7 or 8 kilowatt. There is none other technology in the world than a microinverter can provide a modular conception. Technology to expand the system size. So these things are actually not very heard of in this country. So when you look at the rest of the world versus India, this is a very infancy stage in terms of the solar technology adoption. So our goal for from Enphase in India is to bringing this technology dissemination and the advantages. There are enough people in this market, they definitely value the technology, but the thing is how is it reaching to them? That is the gap we are seeing. So in the last 2 years, Enphase came to India in 2017, and right now we are about 1,300 plus people in India. Not many people know us, that we are such a big operations in India. And we have been seeing 3 to 4x kind of a growth year on year, especially in the residential and small commercial segments. And we're not playing in the utility area. Okay. The why people are looking for such technology solution is they want something foolproof, and nobody likes to have a metro in a rail running on the roof of the house, because it's a DC systems. Typically the other technologies are 400 to 600 volt DC on the roof, whereas this is just 60 volt DC. That's the advantage. It's a distributed AC system technology, and which power up converts the energy at panel to panel basis. So these are some unique technology advantages are driving the adoption in the country. And right now we are seeing much more pull coming from the market. So in the last 2 years we have been active in the market, and we have been seeing good amount of people coming, and our installer base has increased from mere less than 100 people. Today we have around 350 installers in the last 2 years signed up. We have a wide Enphase network, installer network launched, and it's about 55 plus people are the certified installers today, and they have done on an average about 25 to 50 in multiple categories of systems in the residential segment. So this is what we see, and today consumers are in India are getting more aware, getting more into the awareness about the technologies available. And of course, when it comes to a premium technology, there is attached a little premium value to that. And it is not that the products what we have is a prohibitive product, otherwise it cannot be sold anywhere in the world. And there is a 10 to 15% premium for our systems, but it definitely gets the advantages on an LCOE perspective. It comes back to the consumers, and on a period of time with the extra generation, no single point of failure in the system. Even if is in micro inverter fails, it's very unlikely it only one panel output gets dropped. Whereas in other technologies, the entire system gets dropped. There are a lot of advantages for a person, for a people in looking at technology-based solution for solar. So most of the leading companies like Tata, Amplus, all of them are our customers too. I think they have been, evangelists in promoting these technologies, and that's where the consumer get into the, it will come to know about the technology. So we have been working with all of them, and they are a few of our partners in the country. So coming to the in the storage perspective, and we do have storage in the US. We have not launched in India. Then we are launching in US. We are launching in Europe. Then going to Australia. Then comes to India. So by end of the year, we will have a storage also attached to our systems. One beauty with our product is everything is a cloud managed. It's on an app on the fingertip of a phone. You can see the energy generation, consumption, energy export, and all of things can be fraction of a second. One can see it. And the same platform will be integrating the battery systems too. So when we say the battery, we are going to provide 10 years of warranty, and when you say something premium, it has to, the premium has to be attached. So this is lithium phosphate based technology, and it is the most safest, and there is fire safer system in terms of the battery. So this will be launched by end of the year, and alpha systems are going to start by next month in India, and we'll have to go through the rigorous process of beta before we start launching the product in India. So the first product what we will be launching in the battery side will be a grid based battery system. Then we are going to bring the grid agnostic system. So today solar needs a grid voltage, and the new micro inverter which we have, the moment the power goes, and it forms a micro grid. The inverter forms a micro grid, and it doesn't require, it starts generating the solar. It's also start discharging to the consumer gadgets that their electricity needs.
Okay, thanks, Manoj. Just on storage, coming back to you, Jafar, what is the percentage of storage based systems that you're selling in the total residential market? Or is that a reasonable percentage, or is that still very, very low?
When the percentage, is not very significant, I can use the word right now. But the reason is that the storage market in India is of multiple use. Like there's a market which is storage market which is normally being present as of now. I can say that that market is a comfort market. I mean, there are two markets. One is the comfort market, I say. One is the backup kind of consumer. So one consumer is we want a off-grid solution for his comfort or for his backup. There's another class of consumer which normally buy a solar power for his energy saving, and maybe a environmentally conscious consumer who wanted to put back something to the environment and parallelly wanted to save the energy. So off-grid market primarily is a market which is present in the places where the power is comparatively unreliable, and there are places where people buying it as a backup, but that market is in our terms is not very kind of significant. There are multiple reasons. One of the reasons is that market definition of the product in that particular market is still yet to come to a picture, because every state, every locality, they have a different kind of requirement. So they have, somebody want 2 batteries and 4 panels, somebody want 4 panels and 1 battery, whatever. So there are multiple kind of permutation and combination which are in the market. So but I see, again, as I was telling in my first interaction also, I see a lot of change. The consumer awareness level is increasing, and I think it has been told by multiple people during the different spaces that our market is also slowly from the integrator phase to going towards a product phase. So that has already happened in the grid tie system. I think in off-grid system, it is still evolving. That's my
yeah.
But I see definitely a surge. I see a upstick in the requirement of the sophisticated products, as Mr. Gopal was telling, and of course, other people will also buy with that. That there is a demand for these kind of products where the off-grid with the hybrid solution or with the Enphase kind of inverters. Yeah, there is a demand. The size today may not be very big, but there's a demand.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jafar. Just sorry, just to dwell on it a little bit more, Manoj, I believe that Enphase has done some kind of a demand assessment exercise for storage based systems. Are you able to share anything with us?
So India, by and large, the India major market is led us by is the solution for the home inverters, right? So that is about 22 gigawatt. That's what my understanding is. That's a very huge market. We are, compared to the world, TAMs, we have a very substantial TAM, because all of us in this call, everybody has we all face the problem of power outage, and we need to have an UPS systems, right? That's where the battery goes. So today's adoption into a premium technology solution on storage, that is the lithium ion, is what everybody is migrating to. It's very small. It's about 1.5 to 2% of the capacity, maybe about 300 megawatt is what my understanding about the market. Probably my my fellow panelists can correct me if they have a better understanding about this. So that's my understanding. So we see this, the CAGR on the growth on the lithium-ion batteries about more than 30-35% year on year. That's going to be so huge of a growth coming. Today, everyone wants to have independent, energy generation. That is what the world over, the consumers who can afford definitely want to have an independent energy system. They would like to generate their energy, use it, and then sell whatever is extra to the grid. That the same concept India will also get into very soon. So there is going to be enough market for the storage market. And like Jafarji said, and it is a matter of time for consumers to understand, and the technology availability on on the storage side, and how it makes their life simple. Everyone wants their life to be cool and simple. Once you have you don't have to depend on a discount. You have your own energy generation, you use it, right? Or you can even sell it and make money, right?
Sure.
That's my perspective. So anybody can add your feedback on that. I'm not an expert on the storage side.
Sure. Thanks, Manoj. Gaurav, can you hear me okay now? Yeah. So Gaurav, why don't we come back to you? You were talking about the consumer's decision-making process and timelines. And within that, if you can also just talk a little bit about how tied in is the consumer to the government subsidies, and what is the level of market which is available outside of government subsidies, because government subsidies obviously come with their own restrictions in terms of empaneled vendors, use of domestic modules, etc.
So typically on the customer sentiment, what we have noticed is the people that typically are going for solar are much more thought process advanced, much more tech savvy, and still majority from the HNI segment or the tier 1 segment primarily. Even if they are belonging to the tier 2 or tier 3 cities, they are primarily in the top income segments of those cities, and typically are more informed about what is happening. The motivation of that customers is to a larger extent cost saving, and cost saving has been the primary motivation driver. But in a lot of cases, we have experienced that a lot of people are going for solar with the motivation of green savings or environmental conscious savings. And that has also given us a lot of motivation to keep on evolving products and keep on adding more products mix to our solution, so that we are able to cater to those people, because we believe the demand for the premium products or the more advanced products will increase. If I talk about the motivation of people that are going after subsidy, yes, typically the large market share is there for the people that are going for subsidy, and we can see drastic reduction in the state capacity numbers also mentioned in your report. where there are subsidy schemes available, the capacity installed in those states is much, much higher compared to the states which do not have an empaneled subsidy vendors there. So the difference itself is huge, and it is really difficult to see that, okay, those states may be having different mindset or different profiles of customer. That is why it's different. It is too big of an assumption to make. So I believe, yes, subsidy is a driving factor, but with the imposition of the new regulations that you recently mentioned, that subsidy will be available to each and everyone, uh, regardless of the panel vendor. But from our experience, the very key challenge that will come from this policy is that consumers, regardless of it is free or it is readily available or there's a timeline, customers will not go to the discount to apply. The licensing part or everything will always lie with the end consumer or the end developer. And that developer, will he have enough incentive to go forward and do the licensing part of that scheme? And will that come under the budget of the entire benchmark cost that is defined, and what will be the process of availing that subsidy? Will become a major challenge in implementing of this scheme, because we do not want a scenario wherein a good forward initiative is made, but because of poor execution or poor control measures of this, we are not able to reap the maximum benefit out of that scheme. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Gaurav. So, Arijit, let me come to you. I mean, we are talking about subsidies and the various complications that go in with that. And one, of course, is that subsidies are restricted to the use of domestic modules only. What is the Indian consumer losing out by not being able to use the latest technologies and cutting edge products available internationally in other countries? And do you have any specific dedicated products for the residential market that you are selling or about to launch in other countries, including India? Arijit, we can't
Good
hear you.
afternoon, Vinay, and good afternoon, all the panelists. I can't hear. You can't hear me?
No, we can hear you now. Yes.
Audible?
Sorry.
Okay. Good afternoon, Vinay, and good afternoon, all the eminent panelists. Before coming down to your question, if I am allowed to comment a little bit and touch upon the elephant in the room, basically. In your opening remark, you were saying that why the large companies are not showing their interest in entering into this segment. And this residential rooftop, apart from some companies like Tata and Amplus, not much big players are there in this particular segment. So it's basically a story of chicken and egg. But I would say it's not just a story of chicken and egg. It's a chicken and egg and a ghost. And the ghost is the regulatory authorities. Just imagine if you have to buy a washing machine where you have to make 5 documentation, and then the company will say that, okay, you can install it right now, we'll commission it, but you can only start washing your clothes after all the approvals are done, that within 6 months you will get it. So in that case, nobody will buy a washing machine. Maybe some Mahalakshmi manufacturer will be selling washing machines and they will get all the paperwork done. So this is the problem in Indian residential rooftop segment. Anything that you want to sell or you want to promote in residential consumer segment, it has to be made like white goods, like our washing machine, refrigerator, television, just plug and play, which is not happening. You might say that it's an utopian idea. No, it's not. I have seen a residential rooftop system being sold in Australia in just 15 minutes call. The call starts with an inquiry and ends with the credit card number and booking the system. So this is happening in other countries. We should learn from them how they're doing it. There are many challenges. Now connected to that is the DCR. As you said, means I think you came to me last because you know that we are the least stakeholder in this residential rooftop market. Why? a company like Longi, who is the largest solar company in the world, has least stake in the Indian residential solar market, which is the largest solar market which has a potential of being largest solar market in the world, largest residential solar market in the world, is just because the protectionism. And what are the things that are being loosed out? Because of some regulations, DCR, as you mentioned, it is there in the subsidized segment. And also in some states, there are regulations. I really don't know. We don't get into those kind of regulations. Each and every state has their own regulation. Those regulations restrict a lot of new technologies. As Gaurav rightfully said, that because of the benchmark pricing, because of over-regulation, lot of technology innovations are being missed out. If I would say, Longi as a company has dedicated residential rooftop product like 66 cell module. 66 cells modules are getting sold all over the world in residential rooftop in the residential rooftop market. But India never buys 66 cells module because nobody knows what it is, and it's a very small market. And because of DCR, only the DCR modules they are prevailing those market, and larger manufacturer who are selling technology product, they are unable to sell their technology product in Indian market. The higher efficiency modules, bifacial modules are, I think, least sold product in residential market, and this is only because of over-regulation. We use a lot of new technologies. We use our smart soldering technologies, which are being used in utility scale, CNI, all the segments except this residential rooftop segment, just because there are so many regulations, and this market is so small. As we know that we are also selling in rooftop market, but that business is so minuscule. We even don't notice. We just come to know if there is any customer, they came to us, then we have installed this and this has happened, or maybe some kind of feedback they gave. Then only we come to know that this modules has gone to some residential segment. Otherwise, we really don't know. So it is really sad that the largest solar module manufacturer in the world has least stake in a market which has a potential of being the largest residential rooftop market. And I think this can only change if the regulatory authorities, become a little more aware. Awareness is not required for the consumers at all. I have seen consumers as really they know much better than the regulatory authorities. A small town, a village, even a farmer comes with an inquiry, but the local executive engineer doesn't know how to get the net meter installed. Sometimes they also come to know that what it is. This is a new concept completely. So promotions, if government want to do, let them do. Let them promote this concept within the discoms, within their authorities. It's not required for the consumers.
Sure, Arijit. Just to clarify, the use of domestic modules is no longer going to be restricted only for subsidy-based systems. In fact, the government has said that all rooftop solar systems which will be grid connected or net metered, they will require ALMM approved modules, which might again mean another restriction on use of domestic modules only. Just wanted to also quickly touch upon, just sticking to the subsidy point, maybe Gaurav or Jafar can dwell on it. How effective is the actual subsidy disbursement process? If a customer installs a system, in the past, we've always heard a lot of complaints about how long subsidy takes to come. Sometimes it doesn't come for months and years, maybe. Has there been an improvement in that on the ground, or is that still a major challenge in terms of getting the money from MNRE or the state rural agency? Gaurav, maybe you can start on it, and Jafar can quickly come.
Well, it is slightly better if I compare it with the process that used to happen when we were getting subsidies for schools and colleges a couple of years ago, where it was also done by a nodal agency, but there were a lot of parameters that needed to be met. Here, the process is simpler, but I would not say it is very efficient or it is very, I mean, if my expectation is the customer is going and filling out all those forms and submitting and claiming the subsidy himself, they would rather let go of the subsidy in against to the hassle that has towards that process, because there is authorized licensing team. We know all the documents needs to be submitted. We know the customer KYC documents, and we are able to collect them at the time of contract signing. We find it a little easier, but the timelines is still a challenge where we talk about disbursement of that subsidy.
And how much is the timeline, Gaurav, in terms of disbursement?
Typically, it is taking about, if I'm not wrong, a month and a half for the actual disbursement to come after the entire process.
Is there a major variation between state to state?
I'm not really a lot of variation. The process is simpler because, like, if the process has just started, of course, every state has a lot of teething problems, and the process has just started for a lot of states. Like, for example, if I talk about Telangana, the process is so complicated that we're still not able to really get that hang of things yet, and we're still fighting case by case basis. But for states like Haryana, we were pretty standard with the subsidy process because they have been doing that for a while now. So, bearing the teething problems aside, it is fairly a similar timeline for across the states.
Sure. Jafar, do you want to quickly add anything on that in terms of timelines for subsidy disbursement?
No, I'll agree to large extent to what Gaurav was telling, but I think the first thing is that now the subsidy process is definitely there's an improvement. Up to what extent can be a debatable issue, but yeah, definitely there's an improvement. That is one. Second thing I would like to add is that, of course, each state has a different set of efficiency level. So it is not all across in our experience, again, in my limited experience, all state has a different efficiency spectrum, and some states are actually pretty good and some are not so good, but there's an improvement. And third is that now the subsidies is not for the end consumer. In most of the state getting subsidies, the onus is now on the vendor. So the vendor has to, get the subsidy, and then consumer doesn't have to, get the application for the subsidy, except for some state where there's a state subsidy also, apart from the MNRE subsidy. But the biggest challenge I would like to add at this point is that irrespective of consumer wanted to avail the subsidy or not, but if there is a state subsidy program that, kind of generate a hope or kind of expectation in the consumer mind that there is a subsidy, so he will always, evaluate whatever price you offer to him in terms of the subsidy available. So that is a bigger challenge to me than, getting subsidy or not getting the subsidy. So that's sort of, hinder the growth of those consumers, those who might not be looking for any subsidy. As Arijit was telling about the washing machine experience, there's no subsidy. Consumer can go and buy whatever product he wants. But here, because there is a subsidy, he will always, keep on evaluating everything in terms of subsidy. So I think that is all. That's the bigger challenge.
Thanks. Ashutosh, thank you for patiently listening to us. I wanted to come to you in the end because financing is a very important part of this market. It's been a major challenge so far. And like some of the panelists said, in the early days, the market is restricted to the premium customers, consumers, people living in large bungalows, etc. Maybe they don't need financing so much, but it is very, very important for the sustained growth of the market, for the market penetration to improve, that there are lots of very kind of different kinds of financing solutions available to consumers. So would love to hear from you in terms of, I know that you launched a residential product not too long ago, but just to hear from you, what are the contours of that product in terms of term, cost, security, etc. And what's been the consumer response, and how do you see the range of financing products to kind of evolve from here on now?
Thanks so much, Vinay. Not so much of a problem being towards the end, because unless and until a solar deal is made, the financing option really doesn't come into the picture. So we generally, come towards the end. But thanks for having me on the panel. We started rooftop solar financing almost 2 years back, and we have been a SME financing company so long. But when we started rooftop solar, when we started getting more and more into the market, when we started understanding rooftop solar as an ecosystem, we realized that while the MSME segment is of course there, the potential is huge. It sort of naturally lend itself to us because we are MSME financiers. We realized that residential rooftop also there is a real opportunity. Some of the panelists did talk about how it is growing. There's still scope for growth. And we then thought that why not look at this segment as well. So what we've really done is leveraged our learnings over the last 2 years and tried and apply it into the residential space. Of course, the two segments are different, but some of the things remain constant. So, for example, here in the residential space, what we are really looking at is, the most important thing is, of course, collateral-free lending, which we are offering here in the residential space as well. Second is, be it any consumer, MSME or residential, we are trying to keep the EMI equivalent to the electricity bill that the customer is paying. So will be the case here in residential also. That's the endeavor, at least. In a few cases, it does, of course, go beyond the electricity bill. But in most cases, even in whatever little residential we have done, the EMI is equal to the electricity bill that is being paid by the customer. And the third most important thing on which we are still working on, very frankly, I think is as compared to the MSME segment, what is very, very critical in this space is the speed, right? As a customer, as a residential customer, one is of course the capacity size is lower, the loan amount is lower, and hence the customer's expectations are pretty clear that we want a loan faster than what you generally get outside. So we're trying to do that. We haven't yet reached there. What we are really trying to work upon is a technological solution wherein the customer gets a sanction on the spot itself. I think Arijit talked about consumer durable. We very frankly, we are also trying to think on those similar lines. That if somebody is buying a rooftop residential installation in the residential space, the loan should be made available to them on the spot. So, for example, we get a inquiry saying that this customer needs a loan for installation of a rooftop solar system. We should be able to sanction that loan on the spot. At least the customer should have a soft sanction saying that, okay, I am eligible for sanction, and if I go ahead and install a rooftop solar, EFL will fund it. In terms of the product features, we are offering 5 years repayment tenure. Loan amounts, we're starting from 2.5 lakhs, and it goes upward, till 10 to 12 lakhs also on the residential space. Of course, there's no collateral involved in the entire deal. And as I said, the effort is to try and minimize the documentation part of it. So we try and take as less documents as possible, try and rely more on technology. We are not yet there, but I think in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks, we should have a technological solution where the sanction is on the go itself. What we've been experiencing so far in the residential segment is most of the borrowers, and we have done quite a few deals in the last 2 to 3 months, but most of the borrowers are business owners. So, typically what happens is that, the first inquiry which comes from them or their thought process which starts is, why not I look at a rooftop solar for my factory or for my office premises? And then they say that, it's too much of a commitment. Let me try and put up a 3 kilowatts or a 4 kilowatts or a 5 kilowatts on my residence, see how it works for a year or 6 months. And then I'll try and put up a bigger installation on my factory or my workplace. And these are some of the kind of inquiries that we have converted so far. So I think the bigger pie in what we believe in, and of course there are experts sitting out here, is that apart from the business owner space, so there is a business owner who wants to install a rooftop solar in his residence, the professionals and the salaried class, that customer segment, if it opens up, and which we feel it will, that's where the entire thing will be a game changer. We as a financing company are gearing towards that. We're trying to make it as fast as possible, as easy as possible, less documentation, and I think we should be there. What really attracts us to this segment is, while in an MSME kind of a space or a corporate kind of space, you have lumpy loan requirements where you end up, financing 50 lakhs, 60 lakhs, 70 lakhs, or maybe even upwards of a crore in terms of loan size. Here you're going to get maybe 2.5 to 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs kind of loan requirements. Hence it spreads the risk also for us, helps us acquire more customers. So I think, very frankly, quite gung-ho on the market. As I said, gearing up towards making a product which is going to be easy and simple for the customer to avail of. And I think the way it is going so far, so far what has happened is MSME dominates our loan book as on the rooftop solar side. I think in the near future, we'll have more number of customers on the residential side than on the MSME side, if it really picks up.
Okay. So Ashutosh, you mentioned you're trying to keep the EMI below the regular grid bill. And given that the tenor is about 5 years, what percentage of the capital cost can you typically finance this product?
Yeah, so currently what we're doing is trying to finance around up to 80%. But the thought process, and it's not really yet there. The thought process is that why not try look and finance even 100% of the total cost. Maybe not have so much of a margin being brought in by the customer itself. While we might not do 100%, we will clearly try and reach to that figure. So as I said, the effort is to try and be simple, make it more convenient to the customer. What we realized in the last 2 years is that as a loan, when it comes to rooftop solar, typically consumer habits, even be it MSME, be it residential, there is this habit inculcated in us that we pay our electricity bills, right? So I think when it comes to a low EMI for a rooftop solar also, people tend not to bounce that. So so far, touch wood, there has not been a single default on any of our loans. People tend to pay on time. As I said, it's a habit, it's a discipline which people generally inculcate. So we're trying to stretch there, we're trying to push the envelope, saying that why not look at 100% funding. We haven't got there yet, but I think with more experience in the market, it's a very new segment for us. With more experience in this segment, more experience in the market, I think we should be able to reach there.
Okay. And just very quickly, last thing, what is the typical cost? Maybe you can give us a range, depending on the credit rating and other factors.
Yeah. See, there is no credit rating per se here. We of course look at the CIBIL score, and for a good CIBIL score, we are trying to price it lesser than a personal loan. So if a good customer gets a personal loan at, let's say, 13% or 14%, we'll try and price it slightly lower than that. That's been the effort so far.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Ashutosh. Just on the financing, obviously you're offering the debt financing product. But a question to Jafar and to Gaurav: do you see any financial innovation, any business model innovation, maybe some kind of a leasing product or even an OpEx solution? Which, I mean, we haven't seen anything till date, but is there any attempt to push the boundary in this direction? Jafar?
I mean, I will say people are attempting it. So there are attempts being made. I mean, at a substantial scale, as of now, I don't see. But yeah, there are attempts being made. We are trying to do something, but it is not yet. We are not yet there. I will like to say this only. But one thing I agree with Ashutosh also, and I think Gaurav also said, financing will play a major role. That is definitely, that is there. Financing will definitely open the floodgates for this market. And though today it is available, financing is available, but it is a little, not that easy. So we are also exploring options, and I think others are also in the field who are trying to do that.
Okay. Gaurav, is there anything you want to add on that?
Uh, Jafar rightly said that, and if you also notice, initially, if I talk about 5, 6 years ago, a lot of companies started the OPEX model for residential solar, and a lot of those companies are not there anymore or have shifted their focus to other parts or other markets. So why did they fail, and what was the challenge we need to think about? Ashutosh, it's great that you're getting timely payments and there has been no defaults. That is something that gives a lot of confidence in players like us and maybe Tata that we can actively work and develop products, develop solutions that cater to the financing problem as well. Because people who are aware about the benefits of financing will always go for financing and will always look for options that are more financially secure and reduce their overall risk and increase their overall returns. So definitely, like both the aspects, even I would say that how Mr. Manoj also spoke about storage. So storage and financing are two major revolutions just waiting to happen in this segment. And once it is done, the entire segment goes boom.
Okay. Thanks, Gaurav. So one of the things we discussed was that the residential consumer also is driven by financial savings, or they're at least looking at their comparative electricity bill, and they don't want the EMI to be more than that. Is there any sense of what does is there any quantification of the saving that needs to be there on a per annum basis in relation to the capital cost for the system to be viable? I mean, what is that kind of benchmark in the consumer's mind? Is that 10%? Is that less? Is it a little bit more?
Uh, so see, again, those savings differentiate from the state to state basis. It is directly a function of the state tariff. Uh,
Yeah.
and if I talk about the savings for a 5
But
kilowatt
what is the
system,
number? What is the number which kind of makes the consumer swing from a no to a yes?
uh, the only thing, like if I wrap it around, like the plant will be free of cost in the 5 years or in 7 years. That five
Okay.
to seven number is something that appeals to the customer in terms of saving maybe 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees from your electricity bill. So how you market or what is your pitch like is something that really matters. So uh, that is, I think, in our experience, has been more profitable or more advantageous because anyway, our organization is selling a product that is slightly expensive or slightly catering towards the premium segment. So the saving figures itself is not very competitive if I compare it with other products that are available.
Okay, thanks, Gaurav. So one of the things, like I said at the outset, we're quite keen to understand is how has the market responded to the various changes or increases in capital cost, GST, and now customs duty. So it would be great to hear, Manoj, from you, Jafar, and even Gaurav. How do you see the monthly trend, monthly or quarterly trend over the last 1 year? Has the demand suffered because of costs going up? Is the consumer waiting for the cost to come down, or is it like the market continues to grow? And what is the outlook over the next 1 to 2 years, particularly if BCD is imposed from April onwards? Manoj? Manoj, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. So
Yeah.
India is, it's a cost-driven market. People always talk about price first, and then they talk about the advantages, technology, etc. So whenever there is a price disruption, people are slow to respond. There are genuine buyers; they go ahead and buy it. Some of the people will drag on the buys, and then we see some delays. And whenever a disturbance on the regulatory authority on any GST or BCD, anything happens, for at least for a month to 2 months, people will be still reviewing their buying decisions. But after a couple of months, I think it gets become a norm, and the business moves on. So I don't see that a genuine buyer who really want to have the technology and the system on their roof will delay it. They will definitely buy it. But the people, there is a big challenge for EPC companies and partners to convince people and close the business. That is, I heard about 15 minutes time, a call can be closed in Australia, but I don't think that is it's a real situation in India.
Right. Jafar, have you seen any kind of major customer reaction to the costs going up?
I think Mr. Manoj has very rightly summed it up. So whenever there is a policy change, yeah, there are there's some hiatus in the decision-making process, but most of the time, fortunately, we have seen the customer normally kind of shut it off. So, but unfortunately, our market has seen so many of those disruptions in the last few months or maybe a year. But I see the market is growing because once the consumer makes up his mind, so I don't see that normally postponement of decision doesn't happen. It may be postponement of decision may happen, but cancellation doesn't happen. So it may take some couple of months more to close the thing. But generally, I don't see too much of negativity on those things.
Okay. So also one of the last questions, we presented our own projections based on our assessment. The market growing from 1.5 gigawatt right now to about 16 gigawatts by 2030. Does that look conservative, optimistic? I don't know if any of you have your own internal numbers on how the residential market could grow from here on now. What is the growth outlook as per you? I mean, happy to hear from everybody in turn. Let's start with you, Manoj. Just very quickly, do you have any reaction on our numbers?
Sure, the numbers looks to be a good growth. The whole world is looking at India because here is where we have the maximum households available today for conversions, right? The number has to be very bullish. And the other thing what I see is the systems today average is about 4 to 5 kilowatt. Will be a 8 to 10 kilowatt systems in the coming years because the electricity gadgets and the consumer usage and the electricity needs are going to be increased, and government will not be able to bridge the demand in the market. They definitely at some point of time they will come forward and ask people, you generate your own electricity and consume it. That's going to definitely going to happen. And world over, the protectionism never works. It works for a while, and at some point of time it has to be opened up. We have seen in our economy too, right? In the 90s, till 90 we were in a protection economy, and from 90s it's an open economy. So this is really going to happen. So 16 gigawatt is a good bet. I would say that it can be much more than 16 gigawatt.
Yeah, well, China does 22 gigawatt a year, so 16 gigawatt certainly looks very conservative. Jafar, Ashutosh, Arijit, any numbers, Gaurav, from your side based on your assessment of the market?
No, I would only like to add that the numbers are good, looks good. I don't have the real number, assessment number as of now to share with you. But yeah, I share your optimism, and I also strongly believe that this market is definitely poised for a very, very, high growth potential. And today the number, I may not be able to put any number as such, but yeah, I generally agree with you that, and because multiple things are happening. See, as Manoj was telling about the rising requirement of consumer behavior in terms of, his usage pattern. So there's a usage pattern increase. Somebody using 2 ACs a day before today is using 3 ACs, or might be using better appliances. So that is also a growth driver. The electricity cost is increasing. The cost of electricity being consumed by per person per capita is one of the lowest in our country. So there's a huge potential. And then with this, unfortunately, with this era of people working from home, or these things, their requirement at the home for the power is also gone up. So that is also one of the drivers initial when this thing started. So we thought we found that this is one of the drivers in that at least smaller cities, many people were working from their homes. So there's a requirement. So the multiple drivers which are going towards, and with the new draft guideline which says you can choose your vendor, and maybe the clarity has to come yet to come, but at least the broad guidelines are there that you can choose your vendor and you will get the subsidy. That's a very welcome step. I think that will ease many of the roadblocks which today we are facing. So I am definitely yes for it. I look forward to it.
Vinay, I just wanted to add one more point. See, one of the things everybody in the group is doing is we are all moving into digital promotion and digital marketing. So we have a connect to the consumer today, right? That is what is going to definitely drive this market in a much faster than the RAM will be much quicker. So we at Enphase, we started this project. We have seen that in a quick fraction of 3 months, we have been able to do 100 orders close just as a test pilot marketing itself. So which we are trying to take it to multiple states, multiple cities, and all our installer partners are going to be partnering with it. We generate the demand, we bring the closure of the project and hand it over to the partner for executions. This is another thing we are doing. Similarly, everybody is looking at digital marketing and promotions, right? So thereby we can even go closer to the consumer and create the demand. The residential is how to connect with people, right? That it's really happening. It is going to be a major push in the market. It's a word of mouth. It just multiplies.
Sure, Manoj. So just conscious of time, we have got a few questions from the audience as well, so which we will take. But before we do that, just wanted to ask the panel, are there any last points that any of you want to make? Arijit, sorry, is there anything you want to say about maybe subsidies or new technologies, etc., or any of the other panelists?
Technologies are definitely available, but again, devil's advocate that these numbers, they're really good numbers, but numbers are good if only we can implement it properly. So it's conservative. It's for India market, it's conservative, but we have to tweak. And as I mentioned in my last comment, I sat one full day in a call center who are in India selling solar residential rooftop from India for Australia market. Normally takes 15 minutes. And I've seen almost 20 sales in a day. And it's my own experience. So it's possible.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Arijit. Gaurav, any last quick comments?
I think most of them have been covered. I'll just say that that I will repeat at every webinar that I will go to, that India is always late to join a party, but when it eventually joins the party, it brings the party home. So a lot of these factors, everything has been coming in place to set up the base for that exponential growth. There are a lot of policy changes that are happening. There are a lot of incentives being given, not just for the development, but also manufacturing of technologies in-house. There's a lot of things at play simultaneously. We're just waiting for all of them to come together. We thought it would have been coming together a couple of years ago, but it has still not come together perfectly, but it will come together soon.
Okay. Thanks. So, okay, so yeah,
me,
sorry.
And just sharing this from our experience, I think I mean the 16 gigawatt projection seems to be realistic. Maybe it can be even more. One factor is, of course, there are two factors in fact. One is tier 2, tier 3 cities will also play a very, very big role in this. We have a reasonable spread across, especially in Western India, in tier 2, tier 3 cities. And the response from there, so far we haven't done too many disbursements, but at least the awareness is there. And in these markets, typically you will see independent houses, small bungalows, which have space for a rooftop solar, which might not be possible in a city like a Mumbai or even a Pune or a Bangalore, where generally people end up staying in apartments. That's something that we should not underestimate. We are betting big on that. And I think the second bit which somebody talked about is on the storage. So if you have a solution which is storage based, I think it also sort of in some sense tackles the problem that many tier 2, tier 3 cities have. So I think these two are also very important parameters which we feel will push demand here, and of course the need for financing is of course more pronounced in tier 2, tier 3 cities, because many of them are new to credit customers, and I think so whatever projections, whatever the other gentlemen on the panel have spoken about, we are also quite positive and gung-ho on those numbers itself.
Okay. Thanks, Ashutosh. So we'll take two questions. There are quite a few, but we will take two only in the interest of time. So the first question is, are there any new technology-based products which the consumer is demanding? You know, given that we are talking about EV home charging solutions, energy management solutions, potentially energy efficiency. Is there? I mean, do you see that need in the market? Or is any of you, have you, any of you seen rooftop solar combined with these products offering a kind of a basket of energy solutions to the residential consumer? Maybe Jafar or Manoj can take that.
As I was mentioning, there's a quite a few inquiries, if I can say, or from the consumer side, where consumer are looking for hybrid solutions. That is something I told you also during this thing, that there is a kind of requirement where consumer, because in some cities where there's a say half an hour or 1 hour power backup, power outage kind of thing, now the people are using if they are using a grid tie system, along with that they are using a home inverter also. So if there is a hybrid solution available which is solar as well as some storage, they will prefer it. So I see this kind of requirements which are coming. Definitely there's a requirement. I also see some kind of requirement for the premium product, as like Enphase inverters and other. Definitely we need to do a lot of work on that thing, but yeah, there's a consumer side inquiry, at least I can say, is already there.
So adding to Jafarji's comments, there is another technology innovation is happening. So consumers would like to control everything at their fingertips. So there is a new technology being adopted with our microinverters, is a load control. So when the power goes, probably you have 4 ACs, 5 ACs in the home. You don't have to have all the 5 ACs working. So we can software program what are the gadgets needs to be connected when a power goes. We can put a priority list of gadgets. Priority 1 is, maybe the fridge and the microwave oven, etc. Priority 2 is 2 ACs out of the main central room AC, maybe a bedroom AC. So all those options are coming with the app tool that we have today. So right now we are taking up to 20+ load control management through our software. So that's one of the advantage. People always are looking for energy management system today, which should be very highly efficient. So there's something is going to come to India too. It's not, the day is not far. I think Gaurav also mentioned that India is a place people will adopt late. Once they're adapted, you can't change them. Everybody will be running after it.
Sure. Thanks, Manoj. So there is another question about financing, which is why are the financiers so reluctant to offer residential rooftop solar home products, given that there is so much competition in the financing market. There's all kinds of financing products for cars, homes, mobile phones, etc. And this is a market with huge growth potential. So why are the financiers not keen to enter this market, the NBFCs and the banks, etc.? Maybe Ashutosh, you might have an insight into this. What is your competition thinking?
Yeah, I think not too many finances is good news for us, but I think it's just that even on the financing side, but people don't have a very detailed understanding, and not because they're not competent. It's just that they're not given enough attention to this space. Even on the MSME side, if you look at it, there are very few people, very few NBFCs. Of course, there are public sector banks who are quite active there in terms of the financing arrangements. Hence, I think it's just a matter of understanding the market, understanding how big the potential is. Because from a product perspective or from a finance perspective, giving a personal loan or a business loan is no different, or even a two-wheeler loan for that matter, is no different from giving a rooftop solar loan. I think that's not really the case. It's just that I think people haven't really woken up to the potential, haven't really given enough attention to this space as much as it should have. I think that's about the only thing.
Okay, thanks, Ashutosh. I think in the interest of time, we will wrap up the session now. So thank you all very much for taking the time and sharing your expertise and experience with all of us. Thank you, Manoj, Jafar, Ashutosh, and Gaurav. Arijit seems to have dropped out. Hopefully, he'll join back. To conclude, what I can say is that I think we all agree that what we see in the market today is still just the tip, and there is a massive growth potential. The industry needs more innovation on technologies, financing. The consumer is wanting to kind of, is more aspirational, wants new energy management solutions, new technologies, etc. Really, I think one of the needs of this market is to have a consumer durable like solution, as I think Gaurav or Ashutosh mentioned, which is like a standard ready-made product with a standard ready-made financing solution. And I think if these things happen, they're bound to happen, and they are critical to achieving the growth prospects in this market. So with that, again, thank you very much, and thank you again to all the audience. I will just pass over to my colleague Sangeeta for the final closing. Sangeeta, over to you.
Thank you, Vinay, and thank you, panelists, for that interesting session. We really appreciate you setting time aside for us and adding value to our events. Once again, thank you to our sponsors, Enphase and Longi, for supporting our webinar initiatives. Thank you, audience, also for being there for the past 1.5 hours and for your questions. We will be sharing the recording of the session. In case you missed anything, you can go back and listen to it. It will be sent to your registered email ID, and it will also be hosted on our website under the events page. Our next webinar is coming up in the last week of February, and we will be speaking about measures that can increase solar plant efficiency. So until then, it's goodbye from us. Thank you, everyone.